Assalamualaikum and good morning everyone. Today our group will be presenting about one of the dramatic technique which is roleplay and simulation. First of all, this is our group members. My name is Nur Hasha binti Rosli and along with me to present these topics are Alisha binti Muhammad Faisal and Siti Fatima Azhara binti Muhammad Ziad. So let's move on to our first subtopic for today, which is definition and the differences between roleplay and simulation. Roleplay is an act of imitating where a person takes on different personalities which may be different from their own. In a roleplay activity, one of the students may be asked to take a role of an angry parent, which is out of characters for the student. This action may be spontaneous as roleplay typically has no scripts. Therefore, this activity requires more imagination, which can be difficult to manage as they are unpredictable. In their assumed role, students will drop their shyness and personality, making role play one of the best tools available in teaching a second language. For the content and the setup, it may take a long time to complete. Role play can range from 30 minutes or an hour to a year long. Okay, for simulations are instructional scenarios where the learner is placed in a world defined by the teachers. In simulation, scenarios are more complicated and more situated in real life. They represent a reality which students interact and gather meaning from it. Simulations fits well with the principle of student-centered and constructivist learning and teaching, which will be explained later in underlying theories section. It is a form of role play, but more structured, as students may assume other characters or play as themselves. There might be a few formal games rules to follow, but also fewer decisions to make. Once the scenario is created by the instructors, the simulation typically takes a day to complete. Roleplay and simulation significantly contribute to a student's learning as they are able to consider multiple perspectives in a challenging environment. But what are the differences between those two? For roleplay, it is more specific. Each student has their own representative roles. For simulation, it is more general as it is group situation. Every student will keep their own personalities based on the situations they were given. And for roleplay, it is more spontaneous and student-driven. Every student is aimed to give a good performance in the roleplay. For simulation, it is premeditated and teachers-driven. The whole situation is simulated by the instructors. For roleplay, it is based on past events and the focus is on what will happen. Meanwhile, for simulation, the event could be happen, but also can be made up. The focus is on the real-life events. It is more relevant and relatable. So for roleplay, we think as the role himself. This is the problem. How this role can solve the problem. Meanwhile, for simulation, we reflect on our own thoughts. This is the problem. How can we solve it? So let's move on to the next section, which will be presented by the other presenter.
Now that you know the differences between roleplay and simulation, let's take a step back in time and go through some of the historical background on the dramatic techniques and also the underlying theories. How things are over the course of time, roleplay too did not start as a dramatic technique used in classrooms. In fact, it was Dr. Jacob Levi Morena, a Romanian-American psychiatrist and educator, who first introduced the technique that could be dated back to the year 1910. What he introduced was a psychotherapeutic technique known as psychodrama. It is actually an action method and contains spontaneous dramatization, role-playing, and also dramatic self-presentation that comes from the patients. It was used to help patients overcome traumas or talk about it with their psychiatrist. Fast forward 40 to 50 years later, the situational language teaching theory was developed, and The theory has hypothesized that learners must practice language in real-world situations. An example of where this theory has been utilized was in med schools, where they hired actors to roleplay as patients with fictitious conditions that they have assigned to. And then the medical students, they would be evaluated upon their abilities to address the conditions. Now, not only that they, the medical students, get to utilize or practice language in real world situations where they would need to face patients and communicate with them in clinical settings, but also this method has helped the professors, for example, to assess how well the medical students are doing in history taking.
Moving on, simulation was primarily used as a training package in fields such as aviation and medical in the past. One thing that these fields have in common is that they are both really high risk and mistakes should be avoided at all costs. Therefore, simulation is used to train the officers so that when they're out facing the real world, the challenges and tough decisions to make, they would at least be more prepared. Later on, with computer technology advancing more and more, simulation games involving the computer have become sophisticated. Simulation, which started as a training package, had begun to be incorporated in education and training, not only for the fields mentioned, but also others such as farming, business, and even teaching, in order to achieve specific learning objectives. Reader Rabbit was created to help young learners read and learn words, while Oregon's real objective was to teach students about the real pioneer life on Oregon Trail during the 19th century. Both are still available to play today, and if you are familiar with Forza and the Sim series, those are also simulation games. As I have elaborated, these training packages as well as games are all examples of simulation, which require students to be present and active. Most of the time, this is not a problem at all as they are highly interactive. Therefore, it would take quite some time before anyone even gets bored, as compared to rote learning. And basically, this is what we call an experiential instructional method, where students get to learn by doing.
Now I begin with the underlying theories for roleplay and simulation. Roleplay and simulation are based on experiential learning theory. Many influential education theorists, such as Dewey, Lindemann, and Kolb, write about the importance of experiential learning. Creighton 2009 states that these two concepts, learning by experience and reflection, remain integral elements of all modern day descriptions of adult education. Roleplay is also a prime example of an experiential learning technique that can enhance learning in the adult students. Students assume roles in a real-world scenario and must apply and develop the actual skills required to handle the situation or solve the problem presented. Experiential learning is a strategy that fits well with the principles of student-centered and constructivist learning and teaching. So there are four main characteristics, which are voice, choice, competency-based progression, and continuous monitoring of students' needs. These are the main characteristics of student-centered learning. For simulation, simulation is suited as a constructivist approach. This approach is highly experiential, requiring mental and physical activity, and afford the opportunity for reflection. As for constructivist learning and teaching, constructivism is the theory that says learners construct knowledge rather than just passively take in information. So as people experience the world and reflect upon those experiences, they build their own representations and incorporate new information into their pre-existing knowledge or schemas. The process of assimilation and accommodation are related with constructivism. Assimilation refers to the process of taking new information and fitting it into an existing schema, while accommodation refers to using newly acquired information to revise and redevelop an existing schema. So social cognitive theory is congruent with constructivism. So moving on to situated learning theory, it reinforces the need for educators and learners to highlight and manage the ways in which the real practice environment will vary from the simulated learning environment. Change of practice or learning can occur where there are serious contradictions within the activity system.
Now let's move on to the implementation of roleplay and simulation in an ESL setting and classroom.
So the key to implement the use of roleplay and simulation is based on these generally 4 stages. The first one, preparation and explanation of topic by instructor. So during this stage, instructors or facilitators must focus on a theme, select and assign roles, develop procedures, gather necessary materials, and begin arranging the classroom. This step necessitates extensive research and design because an instructor must consider as many aspects of the theme as possible, while also providing explicit instruction on what is expected of students. The second one, student preparation for involvement in role play or simulation. When assigning roles and developing instructions for students, divide the role play or simulation into specific tasks with due dates or time constraints so that students remain organized and not overwhelmed, and also allow enough time for students to research their roles, ask questions, and become acquainted with the scenario. Some students may be experiencing this type of learning for the first time, so providing students with tips or examples is beneficial. Instructors can also prepare students by giving traditional lectures or facilitating discussions that provide additional context and guidance prior to the main role play or simulation activity. The third one, actual role play or simulation activity. Students will need to be guided from time to time during these activities. Despite the fact that a degree of independent learning is expected, for example, if the role play lasts several class periods, it is critical to remind students of rules such as remaining in their roles and using appropriate communication skills. During the actual role play or simulation, instructors will play the role of observer and will interject as needed. If students need to debate issues, the instructor can act as a moderator, or they can simply provide a debrief at the end of gameplay. It is crucial for instructors to make sure that the environment created is one where students feel safe to explore and take risks without being punished for wrong solutions. The second one, allowed to express strong emotions if needed. The third one, respect one another's ideas and support individual interpretations. The fourth one, feel and establish trust between them and the instructor. So the last stages, debrief and reflection. This is one of the most important steps in incorporating role-playing and simulations into the classroom. So students and instructors must process the activity afterward to gain a better understanding of the decisions made and behaviors displayed. Based on feedback, instructors may expand on specific learning tasks, clarify any misunderstandings, or even make changes for future role plays or simulations. Aside from learning, instructors must recognize the overall emotional involvement discussed by students during this debriefing period. Periods of student self-reflection can be integrated throughout gameplay and at the end of each session to provide instructors with a better understanding of how the activity is progressing. So for the next one, the application of online and offline or blended learning in role play and simulation setting. For offline classroom setting, role plays are designed to increase understanding of real-life human interaction and dynamics. Students can assume a role in someone else's shoes or in someone else's situation. Second one, they can do authentic tasks in an authentic context. The third one, involving substantial in-role human interaction such as collaboration, negotiation, or debate. So the three offline application for role play and simulation. The first one is games. Games are engaging, can be highly authentic, and can incorporate a competitive element up to and including advancement to the next stage or problem or winning a prize at the conclusion of the games. So the game feedback is generally immediate, reinforcing the student's application of subject matter knowledge. The second one is enroll human interaction, and the last one is authentic tasks. For role plays, the online environments and tools need to support the first one, direct social interaction among participants rather than interaction with or mediated by a computer model. So the second one, student involvement in building or elaborating the roles they are to assume rather than having this pre-programmed in detail. So the third one, student exploration of a complex scenario that requires the resolution through discussion, debate, and negotiation among roles with differing points of view. These are aligned with Project Enroll. Project Enroll, or encouraging role-based online learning environment, built an Australian community of university clusters, state networks, and international partnership to assist dissemination of the teaching technique of online role play in university educations. So online role play is described by Project Enroll as having the following characteristics. Some characteristics have been pointed out in the previous slides. Therefore, the first one, designed to increase understanding of real-life human interaction and dynamics. The second one, interaction between roles is substantially in an online environment. The third one, learning outcomes are accessible and generate opportunities for student reflections. This characteristic can also aid in setting up the face-to-face learning environment of a role play or simulation. So this will be the steps on how to easily create e-learning courses for online application. The first one, choose an authoring tool that is right. The second one, research e-learning audience and subject matter beforehand. The third one, create an e-learning template or use an existing one. The next one, choose a cloud-based learning management system. The fifth one, use links to add multimedia and resources. The last one, keep video, audio, and graphic elements simple and straightforward. So this will be the additional process for online application for role play or simulation in online setting. So there are 10 important steps in the process. So the first one, design the problem. The second one, design the rules and roles. The third one, set up the scenario. The fourth one, assign students roles. The fifth one, consider the practical limitations of playing out the simulation and make adjustment to the task design as necessary. The sixth one, develop moderation and other necessary skills. The seventh one, assess the technological requirements and develop them as necessary. Next, assist in developing students' skills in asynchronous posting online. Then develop students' understanding of the story that accumulates as they post. And the last one, develop their skills in reflective practice. Use a blog, journal, or wiki space during the role play or simulation and afterwards to assess students' participation and to evaluate their role play or simulation as a learning experience.
Teacher plays good roles in this role play and simulations. First of all, they play as a facilitator. Facilitator provides opportunity for learning, helps learners to access resources, and develop learners' autonomy. So for role play and simulation, teachers will focus on the theme and choose, assign the roles for the students, create guidelines and gather necessary materials, and start arranging for the classroom's activity. Also, the facilitators or the teachers will support the students in their roles and encourage the students to exaggerate their actions, opinion, and movement in role play. Then we have teachers as prompter. Prompter encourage students to participate and make suggestions on how students may proceed in one activity. So for this role play and simulation, while the situation is in progress, the teacher can have the students to suggest vocabulary and act as backup if they have no dominant characters in the situation. Teachers also play roles as the resources. Teacher is a kind of a walking resource center, ready to provide learners with whatever they lack in when performing communication activity. For simulation and role play, the teacher should help the students who are struggles in their own roles, and the teachers need to be available for consultations. Then we have teachers as monitor. Monitor goes around the class during individual, pair, and group work activity. They need to check the learning and provide supports as necessary. So for this situation, the teacher will monitor the process closely and stage a rehearsal. Then last but not least, teacher as assessor. The teacher assumes this role to see how well the students perform and give feedback and correction. So for role play and simulation, the teacher need to consider what to access. Then they need to introduce small non-graded role play situation early in and during the semester to help the students prepare for the larger role play which will be assessed.
I'd like to share some examples of roleplay and simulation activities that you can try as a teacher. One of them being counseling, debates, interview practice, and even retailing. Interesting, huh? Well, can you imagine how the activities could be carried out? Yes? Awesome! No? Oh, not to worry. We have prepared a short demonstration video for roleplay and simulation respectively. Well, enjoy the show! Okay students, for today's activity, I want you guys to pair up and recreate a situation based on the topic, eating out at a nasty food joint. One student will play as a foreign guest to a local cuisine and the other would be a waitress to handle that situation. The situation is reacting to food that isn't familiar. This shouldn't be hard, as most of you guys may find a foreign country's food to be somewhat weird. Role-play situations can be about reacting and asking the waiter to describe dishes that have ambiguous names. Meanwhile, the waitress may use persuasive language to convince the client to try the meal first. Are you guys clear?
Hello ma'am, ready to order?
I don't really know any food in this menu. Can I have your recommendation, please?
Yes ma'am, most local here would go for Eskimo, which is some type of caviar. It is considered a delicacy here. Would you like to give it a try?
Then I'll have that, please. Thank you.
Alright. Sorry for the long wait ma'am. Here's your food.
Oh my god, that looks so nasty. What's on earth that's supposed to be? You don't expect me to eat that, do you? Oh my god, where's your manager? Call me a manager.
Hear me out first ma'am. Eskimo is made of the edible larvae and pupae of ants. It's a harvest from tequila or mezcal plants. It may doesn't look good for you, but you need to give it a taste, ma'am. I promise you it's good. This dish has the consistency of cottage cheese and a buttery nutty taste which you will not regret. So do give it a try.
Fine. I'll eat it, I guess. That's not actually that bad. Here we go. Okay, hi guys. So we are given a task to plan a trip for all the members of English Club to Cameron Highlands. First of all, we need to talk about our budget.
to make sure that our trip is smooth for all the members. Do you have any suggestion?
Referring to our previous trips to another state, the starting price per student would be 150 ringgit. That would pay for a 3 days and 2 nights trip, which includes the transportation, accommodation, and ticket fees. For food, it is based on students' personal budget.
So far, we have discussed with the school about our budget allocation. They can only give us a maximum of 4,500 to support our budget. We also may collect from the students at least 50 ringgit so that we can have more budget for transportation and accommodation.
Okay, that's a good idea. Let's do so. So for our activity, the higher committee already decided to do some benchmark with the local school's English club. Therefore, it is our job to locate and to look for some attraction there. I think that the tea plantation is the best place to go. Which places do you think that we can go and visit there for attraction?
I think we can go to the famous lavender farm. However, we can only go if we have an extra budget as it costs about 15 ringgit per person. With students price, I think we can get it lower.
Yes, I agree. We can also go to Brinchang Open Market. I read that there are many interesting foods and unique souvenirs sold there at good prices.
Now, before we move on to the benefits and challenges of roleplay and simulation, we have identified some do's and don'ts in order to have a successful roleplay and simulation session in the classroom. First of all, it is important for teachers to set goals to the dramatic technique chosen to be incorporated in their lesson. Failure to do so could lead to students having no clue what they would achieve from the lesson. Secondly, clear objectives of the lesson must be stated so that teacher would be able to plan well and align activities with their objectives. Thirdly, although both roleplay and simulation require students to be working among themselves in group, but complete guidelines and instructions that are easy to understand must be provided beforehand. Next, prior to starting the activity, teacher needs to be aware that communication is key and therefore know when to step in or how to provide assistance such as error correction to students. In order for them to produce and use the language comfortably, teachers should know not to correct them non-stop. Instead, step aside and let them be confident enough to participate and use the targeted language. Also, teacher must be careful not to feed them with info that they should come up on their own, but instead provide support for students to discover what to do or say. Roleplay and simulation are truly effective dramatic techniques in class, but this would not be the case if the materials are underprepared and inorganized. During the time when students are busy learning on their own, teachers should not leave them. At times, students could easily lose their focus, especially so when no one is there to monitor them. Monitoring is what teacher must be actively doing, also noting down how students are doing throughout the lesson. After groups have presented, is when teacher needs to debrief the students by restating the goals, lesson objectives, and then give feedback to everyone. If feedback is not given post-lesson, students might trail off and forget what they have achieved. Feedback should also let students know what they have not quite achieved and how to be better.
So for benefits of assessing roleplay and simulation, let's move on to the roleplay first. Roleplay can increase interpersonal communication skills of the students. Also, students can roleplay anonymously during online SLEs. SLEs is simulated learning environment which provide a safe, supportive environment where students can develop their clinical skills, their competency and agency. Also, teachers are able to evaluate students' ability to work under pressure and decision making. Last but not least, students will be able to operate in a tense professional environment which increase the complexity to ensure that every student reach the sufficient level of competency. Then for simulation, students can experience directly the situations that being simulated for their future practice. Also, teachers able to assess students' preparation for the practical placement. Then teachers will also be able to give instant feedback after assessment. Students also able to see their own competency while doing the simulation. And last but not least, during SLEs, students able to improve their decision making, communication skills, and promote awareness of the role the students play in certain settings. So let's move on to the challenges. So for challenges of assessing roleplay and simulation, for roleplay, it consists of cost, time, platform, and anonymity. Students are constrained by cost and available time to plan the play. Students also can be distracted by the new platform for online roleplay instead of focusing on what the roleplay is intended to promote. Then to stay anonymous for SLEs, the students required to tick a box every time they post the roleplay. Then for simulation, it affects students' participation as it creates so much anxiety for students who are not used to talk in front of the class. Then the teachers need to provide guidance throughout the lesson and students need to be scaffolded. Then the time invested in preparing for the simulation may interrupt students from completing other subjects assessment. And the last two, the setup costs can be significant and take time for the students and assessors to assess. Lastly, teachers need to invest time learning the platforms to construct the simulation. Before we end up our presentation today, go take your phone and scan this QR code and answer all the quizzes. Good luck and thank you!